Employees who work in retail. What is the saddest thing someone ever returned? So I helped a woman 7 months pregnant and her husband pick out a whole baby set for their new baby. Stroller, crib, car seats, clothes, and all. The stroller was a high-end model that we didn't sell many of, so it stood out to me. A month later, I saw the same stroller, car seat, and crib in the return bin. When I asked about it, my manager said that the woman and her husband were hit by a drunk driver and killed. Her mother returned the items. Next story. A man returned a Christmas tree one year. He was pretty bummed out, and when I asked him about it, he told me that he was supposed to have visitation this Christmas, but his ex refused to let him see his kids. I still think about that guy, and I hope he gets his kids this year. Next story. I worked at a Subway for a year, and we shared the building with a jewelry store. It was a small business, and we always made a salad for the owners free of charge. One day, a customer at their store is incredibly enthusiastic about buying an engagement ring for their SO. He told the entire Subway crew how he met her after his mother died, and that they've been seeing each other for almost 5 years. He kept saying how happy he was, that he found someone who makes him truly happy, and that all the changes in his life were necessary for him to find true love. Then he came back a few days later. The light from his eyes was gone. He was returning the ring. I talked to the owners later that day after he left, and apparently she broke it off with him because she fell in love with someone else. It was really sad to watch. Next story. Once I was at a pawn shop looking for a new amp when a guy came in wanting to return an engagement ring he had bought the day before. He said he caught his girl cheating when he went home early to surprise and propose to her. Of course, they wouldn't just exchange it or give him his money back, but they did offer to buy it back from him for way less than he paid. He ended up selling it back to them for, from what I could tell, from what I could make out from what I was hearing, much less than he had bought it for. Poor guy was extremely distraught over the whole ordeal. Next story. 2 middle-aged ladies, apparently sisters, were having the time of their life in my department. One bought a ton of assorted housewares, and including some relatively inexpensive but very distinctive colored glass vases. We chatted throughout, and they were fun. I kept thinking how much of a real joy it had been to deal with them. The next week, she came back to return the vases. When I asked for the reason for the return, expecting something like, "Oh, the color or size didn't work like I expected," she embarrassingly explained that impulse purchases were a problem in her manic states.
Alright, y'all, I'm gonna be honest, I don't get like manic states, but I kind of feel this because I bought a shirt yesterday and I was looking at it and I had it with me for 20 minutes and I was in the store, I put it on, I got a different size, and then the second I got home, I said, wow, I don't want this shirt anymore. I have never had that happen before. Buyer's remorse has never hit me so fast before. I wore the shirt later that night, and I tore the tag off. I screwed myself up. It wasn't that expensive. It was on discount, but Jesus, I hate myself. Anyway, next story.
So, customers regularly come in with large amounts of baby supplies returns. They get the wrong gender items or duplicates. An older woman came in with a cartload, so I asked about the new baby. And then she slowly, and through tears, explained that her only child and grandbaby had died during childbirth. Next story. Not a return, but I worked in a jewelry store, and the saddest sale we ever had was a layby. Guy had this ring on layby for 12 months, but died in a car accident. His parents came in, picked up the ring so his girlfriend could keep it. I don't think she had any idea he was going to propose. Next story. Jared Allen bought like 15 families Christmas at the Target I worked for. I mean like big ticket stuff for everyone, like TVs, iPads, etc. It was something like $15K total. The next day, since I was the security manager, I was screamed at by 8 of those families that wanted to do returns for cash, saying I was ruining their children's Christmas. I made it to my lunch break before I comped out. Next story. A guy was returning baby formula, and he was looking pretty down. I asked him how his day was, and he said that he's been having a long day and that he's been having a long month too. I thought that he just had a baby, so maybe he just got the wrong formula. I asked if he just had a baby, and he said he used to have a baby. I told him I was sorry, and he said it was okay. And there were a few minutes of silence, and he said he was a fun little guy. Next story. Returned her husband's replacement razors. I asked her if he was unsatisfied and maybe wanted another kind or style. Nope, he died earlier before his birthday to receive them. She started crying, and I just leaned over the counter to console her. Edit. Oh wow, who knew this would hit a chord with so many people? Well, a little more background, if interested. I was a lead at a certain store, advertising a Wild Beyond section, so as stated below, I told her I had lost my best friend nearly a decade ago, and to this day, the tiniest memory or smell can bring up moments that make me emotional, so not to feel embarrassed over a pack of razors. Then, abusing my position of trust, I couponed the hell out of her purchase and talked with her for a while. It's rare in retail, but there are those moments where, despite the din around you and the mounting lines, you have to be a human and just listen about someone's day. So she and I chatted a while and I never saw her again. Next story. A set of Mr. and Mrs. pillows. She had a tan line where her engagement ring was, a black eye, and her neck in a brace. It turns out the fiancé was abusive, but he didn't show his true colors until about a month before the wedding, when he thought he had her trapped. Luckily, she got out alive, and I felt so bad for her. Next story. I was working at a large pet store in the tropical fish department. One busy weekend, a very well-dressed, rather snobby woman came in and bought 6 baby angelfish, each about the size of a dime, plus the fins. The store I worked in was inside a huge high-end shopping mall, so we had a holding service where we would bag up each fish, cash the customer out, and float the fish in their bags in a warm tank until the customer was finished with all of their shopping and ready to leave for home. As a matter of course, I offered to hold this lady's baby angelfish. She said she was all good and left. We thought nothing of it since many of our customers came in from outside the mall just to stop at the pet store and didn't bother visiting the rest of the mall. Then, 4 or 5 hours later, she stormed back into the store demanding a manager and a refund. She was shaking the bag in our faces for emphasis, yelling that her gorgeous angels were all dead. On close inspection, we discovered that this silly B-word had put the poor fish in her car, presumably so she didn't need to carry them while she stopped for other things or returned to the store to pick them up. Unfortunately, because it was January and the temperature outside was about -15 Celsius, the tiny babies had frozen to death. She simply couldn't wrap her head around the idea that tropical fish cannot withstand freezing temperatures. And even when we took a tiny fish out of the bag and showed her that not only had ice formed on top of the once 84 degrees Fahrenheit water, but the dime-sized fish was actually frozen stiff. Some people just shouldn't have pets. Next story. I work at a thrift store and it's not exactly returning, but we get a lot of sad donations. Like, we got a father's self-unaliving recording made for his 2 sons. It's like 2 hours long. I listened to the whole thing. Also, there's a guy who comes in every week and donates 1 box of stuff. I asked him if he was moving one time, and he said, "No, these were my wife's. She's passed away now." And I am never asking someone why they're donating ever again. Next story. I worked at Toys R Us in the late 90s, before they were really a separate baby store, and we all sold the cribs and clothing, etc. Someone returned carts full of baby items from a registry. An older man came in on behalf of the mother because the baby was stillborn. We accepted all items at full price with no receipts and gave back cash. Family certainly didn't need hundreds of dollars in store credit. Next story. I used to work for an online retailer that sold baby items. Think baby memory books, clothes, toys, growth charts, etc. Someone was returning a baby memory box where you can store items like their baby shoes and teeth for posterity. When I asked what the reason for the return was, she said it was because they had lost the baby. You could tell in her voice how hard that was to say. I was fresh out of college, childless, and I had no idea how to react. Fortunately, that was the only time I ran into that during my time there. Next story. I worked in a plus-size clothing store. I helped a woman pick out a wardrobe for a 2-week cruise that she was going on with her boyfriend of 6 months. A few weeks later, she returned all of the clothes unworn. I asked her if the cruise was canceled, and no. It turns out there was never a cruise or a relationship. This guy was dating her as a prank, and he and his buddies schemed to see what they could get the girl to believe. She thought he was in love with her and wanted to move in together soon. His parting words to her were like anyone would really date a fat ass like you. Wow, this one is horrible, guys. That is really terrible. I really feel for that woman because 6 months, OP said. What can man do against such reckless hate? What? If I had a friend who did that, I would yell at them. And then probably, I don't know, I don't want to say I'd punch him, but what the hell? That is awful. I feel so bad for that woman. Anyway, next story. I work at a liquor store in a college town, and one night some younger guy was returning a keg barrel, only it was still half full. I jokingly asked the guy if it was a crappy party or something along those lines, and he responded with, "Yeah, it was a party for one of our friends who died the day of the party." Next story. Nobody will see this, but I'm on the other side of the coin here. Last fall, my dad decided to finally get his hearing checked and assessed for hearing aids. He really needed them. He wanted to be able to hear his first grandbaby, my daughter, coo and babble when she was born in January. Unfortunately, the ones that worked best for him were outside of the budget he and my mom could afford. Husband and I decided Santa would gift them to him, and he cried. His new ears gave him a new lease on life.
He was happy, he was chatty and interactive during family get-togethers because he could actually hear everyone else enough to participate. Fast forward to January and he is the happiest of grandpas, and he was the first person to hold her after my husband. Then Dad started feeling sick in February. He died on April 20th, 2016. Baby was just 10 weeks old. My mom has been largely unable to handle things in the wake of his death. Among all of the other things that I've handled for my family, because it's just too hard on everyone else, Mom asked if I would do something with his ears. So I ended up calling the hearing aid shop and asking if they knew of any donation program where someone could benefit from the use of his ears, and we actually ended up donating them to an elderly woman who was having difficulty communicating with her family and couldn't afford new ears of her own. Dad would have liked that. I like to think that she can hear her grandbabies giggle and laugh now. I have declined the opportunity to meet her. I don't think my heart could take it. Not yet, anyway. Next story. I work in customer relations for a luxury car dealership. I get basically paid to interact with customers and make them feel more at ease during the buying and servicing of their vehicle. That being said, I get to know and like a lot of our customers. So one day, last year, around Halloween, we had a young family come in looking for an SUV since the wife was pregnant and the husband had just gotten a huge promotion. They had a kid already that was around 4, if I remember correctly, and were just actually cool-ass people. I actually spent a lot of time getting to know them through their buying process and was excited to have this family get their dream car. Fast forward to this August and I see their SUV out in the parking lot. When you work at a dealership, you learn your favorites' plates and cars, or I'm an effing freak, but both are possible. But I ask around and no one in service is working with them, so I ask our sales manager, thinking they're switching into the redesigned model of the SUV. We'd talked about it when they first got their car, and he gave me an uneasy look and said it was the wife's mom, and I should talk to the sales guy. Weird, but okay. Then I find the sales guy, and he's also uneasy, but after a few minutes tells me to go to the back office and he'll fill me in. Apparently, the husband lost his crap and ended up unaliving himself and his wife a few months prior. She had just had the baby, and I suppose that stressed him out. Her mom was called when the toddler went to a neighbor and said his parents were messy and still sleeping. Basically, the mom was there to see if we could buy the vehicle back after getting everything else taken care of, which we did. So the TLDR is, cool-ass family came in and bought an SUV, and less than a year later, the husband lost his crap and killed his wife. Mom of the wife had to return the SUV. Also, sorry, I've been drinking all day. Sorry for words, grammar, and rambling. Next story. A guy came into a jewelry store and wanted to help find his wife something nice. Throughout the whole process, he told me that they were having problems and he thought they were going to split up. He was lovely, but slightly weird for whatever reason. Anyhow, he bought her a diamond ring and left. Exactly 2 days later, he returned, sad, and asked if he could have a refund as she had split up with them. Turned out their problems were much more about how much money he was spending, and so she wasn't exactly thrilled that he had gone and bought her diamonds. Next story. I worked at a vitamin store. The most commonly bought item were weight loss/control pills that had ephedra in them. Zenedrine and the store brand equivalent were the most popular of those, next to Hydroxycut. Our store sent memos that due to recent problems with the products, we would be honoring full refunds even if the product was open and mostly used. And the people returning them were tweaked to their follicles, shaking, sputtering, saying, I can't take this stuff anymore. It's making my heart beat too fast. And I'm just like, okay, it's okay. Next story. This kid came in by himself and was looking for some socks or booties for his weenie dog. He was telling me about how he got her and how her legs didn't work anymore, so he didn't want her getting hurt while she was dragging. He paid a bunch of pocket change and then ran out the door. A couple of days later, he came back in and just handed me the socks back. Next story. Worked at a clothing store that was popular with teenagers. A spoiled tween came to the register, accompanied by her mom, and laid out easily $500 worth of clothing, probably around 20 plus tops, 5 pairs of jeans, a jacket, shorts, sandals, etc. As I'm ringing up this absurd amount of items, another girl, I assume the first girl's friend, joins the tween and her mom. As she approaches, I realize the friend must have recently underwent chemo. She was probably a tween as well, completely bald and frail. She approaches the girl and her mom with a single tank top, and the friend says, "Is it okay if I get this?" And the mom says, "Sure, but Susan needs to put back one of her items." And then the daughter says, "No way, Mom." Profanity-laden verbal assault on her mother ensues after that, and the mom decides to purchase about $500 of clothes for the daughter, while the cancer-stricken friend returns the $10 tank top. I continue despondently ringing up everything, hating the world. Next story. Not strictly return or retail, but
At the cinema I used to work for, someone booked an entire gold-class lounge so they could propose to their girlfriend alone. This cost thousands of dollars. He had a special video made up to play after the trailers, the whole 9 yards. A day or two before the big day, he called to cancel his booking. His girlfriend had dumped him. Next story. I worked for a relatively sizable chain that operates primarily in the Southeast USA. Our primary demographic is women 40 to 65, but we have a pretty extensive men's section with some pricey crap, Calvin Klein, Michael Kors, stuff like that. Now, I'm a 20-year-old trendy-ish dude, and like at least 75% of my shirt and pants come from that place, so it caters to all sorts. Anyway, I had a woman come in one afternoon and was very snippy to both me and the manager working that day. She plopped about $80 worth of men's clothing on the counter and asked me to return it and give her the cash back. No problem, she had the receipts and everything. She rather rudely asked me where the large men's shirts and pants were, and when I told her I was unfamiliar with the exact layout of the men's department, I was a cashier and almost never left the front, she rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, and proceeded to accost my manager for their location. When she came back up to the front, I tried to be as jovial as I could and asked her if she was buying for her husband. She responded that no, she was buying for her son. Apparently, he was almost 30 years old, still lived at home, no job, and had recently outgrown his XXL pants and underwear, and she needed to find some 3X. She mentioned that he didn't really leave the house much and relied on her to do his shopping because he had attempted taking his own life a few months previously and since then had become even more of a recluse than he ever had before. She got misty-eyed and stopped talking rather abruptly. Now, I normally hate being the guy who brings up his mental illnesses in public. It just makes everyone involved uncomfortable. I avoid the topic like the plague unless it's with my partner or a very close friend, but I felt like she needed to hear some words of reassurance. I told her that 2 years previously, I was in a place just like her son, that I was shut in with no ambition, had pretty crippling depression, and struggled a lot with self-harm. I also mentioned that I had attempted taking my own life over a year or two previously. Her hand was on the counter, so I lightly touched it, and I just said, if I could get from where I was then to where I am now, your son is going to be just fine. And she started to lose it at that. I gave her a 20% discount on all of the stuff she was buying, and she left. I never saw her come in the store after that, but I still think about her a lot. I really hope her son is doing better. Next story. Not me, but something I read a few months ago. I take care of the orchids in a floral store and had a young woman come in, maybe in her early 20s. She was very sweet, attentive, and wanted to know about everything we had, but eventually settled on an orchid. She was very excited about moving into a new home and had me help her find a flower that would brighten up the place. She listened very closely to the directions I gave her for caring for her new plant. It was a gorgeous plum and white blossom and very hardy, and even had me write them down for her. I used store stationery and even wrote my name on the card and told her to come see me if she had any questions at all. Then, about a month and a half later, an older man comes in with the orchid, possibly her father. He'd seen my name and the name of our store on the card and brought it back to us. The young woman had passed away in an accident shortly after moving, and he didn't know how to care for the plant. It was in great shape. I could tell she'd been taking good care of it, but he didn't want to do anything with it. He asked me to refund it and put it back on the shelves, as even with the directions, he wasn't sure he could take care of it. And even if he could, he didn't want it around. I think it reminded him of her too much. I have a small amount of oversight in the department, so I managed to trade him the orchids for a funeral bouquet that was worth a lot more. I was supposed to put the orchid back on display, but I couldn't bear to. I got permission to bring it home with me, but even with all the care I gave it, it died a couple of weeks later. I don't know if flowers can miss people, but part of me likes to think this one did. Next story. Not sad as in makes you cry, but sad as in what the F is wrong with you? Our returns policy was extremely lenient, and if you complained, well, our managers would let you return anything. So this lady comes in with a pair of dirty, worn, broken shoes and asks for a refund. I asked for a receipt, and she bought them 3 months ago. So I told her she wasn't getting a refund, but lo and behold, my manager came along and gave her a brand new pair of shoes. Who the F tries to return a pair of shoes that they've worn to the bone? Next story. During college years, I worked in the courtesy booth of a large grocery store. One woman brought back a jar of pickles. The lid opened a little, and she said, "These baby jerkins are not full-sized normal pickles." And I said, "They're baby gherkins and not supposed to be full-sized." Then she finally said, "Well, they were on sale and I expected something bigger than a baby jerkin," and then walked away, leaving the bottle there. Next story. Back when I had just started college, I worked at Barnes & Noble. One night, I was working a shift at the cash register, and a lady came up with a handful of books and a stuffed llama. I told her the llama was really cute, and she was like, "I know, isn't it great?" and she checked out and walked out to her car where her husband and son were waiting. 5 minutes later, she came back inside. She said she had to return the llama, and I expressed surprise and I asked why, and she said, "My husband wants my son to have a more American animal, like a lion."
Okay, what the hell? Lions are not American animals. When you think of America, do you think of lions? No. Maybe when you think of Andrew Tate and those stupid Sigma Alpha males on the internet, but I'm thinking of the bald eagle, damn it. Lion, more American. I guess it's more masculine, but American? Bald eagle. So don't hit me with that llamas aren't American crap, because lions aren't American either. Stupid. Llamas are cool. Next story.
I used to be a manager for a Disney store. We had a regular old man come in with his wife regularly. Super cute couple. I mean, matching outfits, holding hands, just cute as could be. We used to sell these huge stuffed animals, like ginormous. The couple came in about once a week and would just walk around, laugh and smile, buy things here and there. One night he came in on his own and bought one of these gigantic Mickeys we had. It was like $300, I think. He was so excited. He told us all about how he was going to take her out to dinner and it would be sitting there on the bed to surprise her when they got home. Anyway, 2 days later, he walked back in, carrying the gigantic Mickey Mouse plush to return it. He had brought it to surprise her for her 75th birthday, but she passed away in her sleep the day before her birthday. He thanked us and said goodbye, and that he would not be coming back because our store reminded him too much of his wife. We found out that he passed away a week later. It was just 7 days from the day his wife passed. We found out all the details because one of our employees went to their same church. Next story. One time I helped a woman pick out some items for her elderly sick dog who had incontinence problems. He had been sick for a while, but she had seemed optimistic. That morning before she took him to the vet, he was doing much better than he had for the last few weeks. He was energetic and mobile. While I was checking her out at the register, she got a call from the vet, and I stood there and watched her face crumble as the doctor told her that he had a seizure on the exam table, and there was nothing they could do for him, and all I could do was step out of my register box and hold her while she sobbed. Next story. Not in retail, but best friend is. Anyways, a couple of days after Christmas, a heavier set young lady walked in and asked to return a crop top because it didn't fit her right. The saddest part is that she returned it from the bullies at school who said they thought it would look good on her, but she thought they were finally going to be nice when they got her that present. Then they laughed in her face and poked at her belly when she walked out of the bathroom stall to show it off. The poor girl cried. My friend ended up buying her like 3 new flattering shirts. Next story. This happened a little over a year ago. A frail old woman came in to return an unopened box of a very expensive brand of cologne. She didn't say much past, "I need to return this," and me, being the people person I am, tried to jokingly mention did her husband not like the brand? Then she sighed and said, "It was his birthday present, and when I went to visit him in hospice to give it to him, he had already passed away." And I was speechless, and I profusely apologized and ended up talking to her about her mom passing away a few months prior to this, and we ended up crying together in the store and talking for an hour and a half. She left with a smile on her face, but the initial reaction still haunts my dreams. Next story. I'm a cashier at a department store. As a cashier, I'm supposed to ensure the customer has a positive experience and whatnot. This usually means I have a little conversation with the customer. One day, I get a customer who returns a basket full of newborn baby clothes and other baby stuff. We typically ask why they are returning the merchandise in case it was torn before they bought it or whatnot. Since it was baby clothes, I jokingly asked, "Did it not fit? Was it a girl in the end?" And the customer just stared at the baby clothes in front of me and said, "They lost the baby during birth." And I was not expecting that response. I kept apologizing and gave my condolences to her, but I felt empty for the rest of the day. Next story. I can't even remember when this occurred, but I want to guess a year or two after 2006. I worked at a Hollywood Video, which is a Blockbuster competitor, as a regular hourly worker. One evening, a woman came in with a few children's movies about 3 months late. Instead of dropping the movies in the DVD drive-thru box or the walk-up return box, she came directly into the store, visibly shaken and on the verge of tears. She apologizes for the movies being late and explains that her young son had just died and that she had forgotten to return them. My coworker and I were so floored that we offered her several free rentals, a popcorn candy soda pack, and a few additional credits on her account. It was definitely one of those rare times that I didn't feel like my time was a total waste at an entry-level post-high school job. Next story. Not retail, but worked at a car dealership. Had a newlywed couple come in wanting to buy a new vehicle, but didn't want to discuss the option of trading in his current premium model car. The longer they were at the dealership, the more worried his wife seemed to be. Finally, while discussing the final finance paperwork, a tow truck pulled into the dealership and repossessed their vehicle. The finance company had just not reported their lack of payment to the credit bureaus yet. The wife then went into full mental breakdown mode and started putting him on blast in front of everyone that would listen. Evidently, he lost his job a couple of weeks before the marriage and didn't tell her. He also didn't tell her until earlier that week that he had stopped paying the bills. So she learned her husband hadn't had a job for the past 4 months. The bank already sold their house out from under them, and both of their cars were now repossessed all in 1 week. She also mentioned that the down payment check wouldn't have gone through anyway because they only had $50 to their name. Oh, and she was 3 months pregnant. Next story. A woman came into the pet store I work night shifts at and bought a ton of stuff for her new rat. Then, about 2 days later, she returned everything, including the rat. She put him in a soda box, turned on the short end. He was coated in feces and urine. I took him in the back and cleaned him up, but God, I don't know that I've ever felt so bad for an animal that I really have never taken an interest to. Next story. I'm not really sure if this counts, but I worked for a chain sporting goods store for a few years. One day, this woman comes up to the register with some soccer stuff for her daughter. She's shaking and frantically trying to dial someone on the phone. We had a quota to sign people up for our point card, and we would be punished for not meeting a certain percentage of sales with signups. Well, this lady didn't have a card, so I'm asking her all of the normal questions, and she's answering me. The system fails, and all the info she gave me was lost. And I feel bad because I can just tell she wants to get out of the store, but I need to go through it all again to be able to sign her up. Then she gets through on her phone call finally, and as it turns out, her mom just had a heart attack or something, and it wasn't good. She's trying to hold it together in front of her kid, but I can tell she wasn't in a good place. So I say F it. I ring her out as fast as I can, and she bolts out of the door. I figured the potential write-up was worth it because she needed to be somewhere a hell of a lot more important than my register. Next story. They didn't actually return anything. We offered to return something. So, I work at a pet store and we do dog training. This guy got a pit bull and signed him up for one of our training packages that includes Adult Level 1, Adult Level 2, and a Good Citizen test. He finished Adult 1 and everything was great. He registered for his Level 2 class, and then, when the day came, didn't show up. This was out of character for him, but the trainer gave him the benefit of the doubt, and since he was the only dog in the class, didn't think much of it. But, as we learned, the 21-year-old kid was murdered early that morning while his dog was around. We found out from an online news thing. The girlfriend figured something was weird when he didn't meet up with her after his training class was over. Even though it's past the return time and he bought a package, we offered to return the unused class to the family. The girlfriend didn't want to because the owner would have wanted the dog to be trained, especially being a pit bull. Next story. Created an account because this is something I can finally answer. I used to work at Old Navy a few years ago. My coworker was ringing up a return of some XXL men's clothing and, per standard procedure, asked for the reason for return. The customer said that her son had just taken his own life, and the pieces of clothing being returned were supposed to be his burial outfit, but she had to return them because the clothes didn't fit. The clothes were tried on his body and ended up being too small. The store had a heavy scent of embalming fluid for the rest of the day. Next story. Not so much a return, but an old man came into the photo lab I worked at to pick up his photos. He has dropped them off months ago and he had no ticket. Turns out his house burned down and he lost everything. We helped him find the photos, and all he had were photos of a gray cat sleeping or sitting by a window. But he cried like a baby when he saw the photos. He was old and living alone. The only thing he cared about was that cat, and it had died in the fire. And I forgot to charge him for the photos. My bad. Next story. Not my story, but my supervisor shared a story with me about an old woman who placed a large order to redecorate her and her husband's home. We're a store that mostly sells general home items, but also have a large selection of furniture. Well, she had selected several thousands dollars worth of merchandise. A lot of it was special order, so it was being sold non-refundable. But the woman ended up passing away shortly after everything was delivered. And the husband, he just couldn't deal with all of the new stuff. He wanted to keep all of their old things exactly the way they were, so my supervisor made an exception to have it all returned and refunded. Then, somewhat similarly, someone created a registry for their upcoming baby. They had a ton of baby stuff picked out, but unfortunately, the husband had later called in to say his wife had miscarried, and the baby did not make it. The wife was okay, but in no condition to talk on the phone. So again, My supervisor allowed everything to be returned. No questions asked. Next story. A woman came up to the return desk with 3 shopping carts and a fistful of long receipts. She explained that she was a compulsive shopper and that as a part of her therapy, she was supposed to return everything to face how much she had been spending. It took me over an hour to ring up the hundreds of items she had, all new in box, all with receipts. And when it was all done, it came up to nearly $800. And a lot of the things had been bought long ago that they had clearanced out. So her return was pennies on the dollar. Next story. A woman late into her pregnancy and her husband came in shopping for some baby clothes. A lot of it. I spoke to them while checking out. The woman was 7 months pregnant and the father just got a new job. They came back home a month later and returned everything. The baby came almost 2 months early and did not survive. I was completely speechless after that, and I went into one of those "this world effing sucks" moods for the rest of the day. Then this one girl I worked with heard them say that, and her eyes immediately began tearing up. She ran to the break room so that the couple wouldn't see her. Then, on the other hand, I had seen a pretty tragic buying before. Some lady had been married to her husband for 30 years and was getting a divorce at age 50. Husband was cheating, so she decided to buy over $1,000 worth of clothes and apply for our store credit card just to stick the bill and dropped credit score in her husband's name. Next story. I used to manage the warehouse at an electronics store and occasionally sold stuff and did returns and whatnot. A younger guy came in, about 19 or 20, said he just got his first real job and wanted to buy a big screen TV to celebrate his first paycheck. So, sold him a good TV, did the normal testing for him, slight discount on warranty and whatnot, because I'm cool like that, and he was super happy. I packed everything up for him and had it out in his hatchback, probably his parents' vehicle. But then, a week later, I saw the TV in my warehouse with a return tag on it. I asked around a bit, but nobody really knew until our usual customer service girl came in to start our shift. So what I was told after I sold the TV is that he was on his way home when a deer jumped out in front of the car, went through the windshield, and killed him instantly. The TV was undamaged because I had laid it down on the floor in the back all wrapped up in bubble wrap in the box. His dad came in and he returned it. Next story. A customer of mine from Best Buy has to return her son's gaming laptop, and I had to make the exception for out-of-policy return. After saving up for months, her son took his own life for some reason, finally being able to buy it. It was truly my saddest moment in retail. I don't know the details, but I think it was from bullying and wanting to take his own life. I had helped them make the decision on which one to buy. She had told me in secret that she was going to pitch in a few $100s for the additional games that he wanted because he saved enough to basically only get the laptop and the protection plan. I believe it was the Asus G72 gaming laptop. Myself and the employees at customer service cried with her. Next story. I used to work at a local jewelry store, and it was nice seeing all of the happy couples. It didn't hurt that the job paid really well too. Of course, we occasionally had guys come in returning rings from girls who had told them no. Most of them were fairly pissed. But this one guy, I'll never forget him. I saw him pull up into the parking lot, so I walked away from my computer and went over towards the door to help him out when he came in. And he just sat there in his car for so long that I started to get pissed off that I had left my computer. It was winding down to be the end of a long day, and I was considering locking the door because it was time to close, but I wanted that money. So I said I could give him a few more minutes. He finally came in looking down at the ground, and I couldn't really see his face, but his ears were blood red. He put 3 rings down on the counter, an engagement ring and 2 wedding rings, his and hers, and a few wrinkled, wet receipts. I didn't really know what to say. I finally just asked him, "Return?" And I went through all of the return stuff, and he never said a word. I told him we didn't have the cash on hand, but if he wanted to come back tomorrow, we would have it. And then he just turned around and walked out. I tried to stay calm, but that guy had me freaking out. He was still sitting in his car when I closed up the shop, and it took me some time, but I finally worked up the nerve to go over and ask if he was all right. I knocked on his window, and he started his car and drove away, and I almost fell down trying not to get hit. He never came back to get his money, and I avoided the news because I was afraid of what I would see. I put in my 2 weeks' notice a few weeks later because that place did not make me happy anymore. Next story. Not me, but my brother said one time a 40-year-old quadriplegic woman tried to return a bottle of feminine hygiene fluid that was used and filled back up with water, a broken flip phone, which the store did not sell, and a tank top with a mysterious white stain on the front, all for store credit at a Dollar General. Okay, so forgive my ignorance here, but was she driven? Did somebody drive her there? Or did she just
get there herself? I don't know. I've never met a quadriplegic before, so I just have some logistical questions that I want to figure out. I want to be enlightened. I want to learn so I'm not ignorant because, girl, what? I don't know. Next story.
So, this guy came in the store at Radio Shack. He was a regular and he was mentally slow. He always came in but never had money to buy anything, just to look around. Well, he came in and there was this guy following him. The slow guy comes up to the counter. He pulls out a Radio Shack brand MP3. It was heavily used, no box, no receipt, and all we could offer was store credit. He keeps trying to bargain with us for even just $20. The guy following him comes up to the counter and says, "You better get me my effing money." And we couldn't give him any money back towards it. The other guy, he was real pissed, and they left together, while the one guy kept yelling at the slower guy. I always wondered what happened there. Next story. Work in a pet store. We rarely get dead animal returns besides fish, but it does happen. My flaw is I get attached to some of the animals in my care mostly if they don't sell right away and are very handleable. I'm fine when they eventually get sold, better than living in a pet store anyways, but the worst experience was when I sold a guinea pig who was extremely sociable and loving to a nice-looking family. A few days later, they come in and I recognize them, holding a small box in their hand. Their son had thrown it against a wall in a temper tantrum. Knowing I had a hand in the death of one of my favorites by selling him, it wrecked me for the week. Next story. I used to work at Target when it was here in Canada, and I consoled a sobbing man close to 30 who was returning several boxes of Legos. I didn't ask for an explanation for fear it was too painful, but he confided in me that his baby brother had died of cancer at the age of 12 a week before, and hadn't had a day where he felt well enough to play with the toys before then, and I'm actually in tears writing this. It was the most emotional thing I have ever gone through outside of my own family. Next story. Wasn't exactly a return, but I worked in a bakery for a few years, and one day I took an order for a cake to be made the following week. Customer wanted, "Happy retirement, Sergeant," and then their name written on the cake. Well, a week later I come into work and looked at the cakes that were being made when I noticed the order. I did a double take and noticed it said, "Happy retirement in heaven," and then the sergeant's name. The customer called back 3 days before the retirement party to change the writing on the cake. Next story. I was the one returning, but the conversation made me sad for the girl in the shop. We paid a deposit on a pram, but a few weeks later, we didn't need the pram anymore. So the girl says, "Oh, no problem, I'll sort that out for you." And you could see the sadness in her eyes. But I told her not to worry because my girlfriend had entered a competition and had won a few €1,000 worth of baby equipment. So you could see the instant relief in her face. Made me kind of sad that she has to deal with situations like that and still do a professional job though. Next story. I didn't personally take the return in this case, but it's still sadder than hell. I was the electronics sales floor acting lead on weekends in a big box store. I went to lunch one slow Sunday and came back to find that the service desk had taken a return on a VCR without opening it to check it out. We'd had problems with returned boxes being filled with rocks. The service desk had standing orders to open all electronic returns. So I go up there to check it out, and there was not a VCR in that box. There was a Bible with a family tree handwritten in it dating back to the 1840s. Manager decided to throw it out instead of tracking down who it had obviously been stolen from. That was when I decided not to make a career at that company. Next story. Back when I was working on my undergrad, I worked at a sports chalet, a sporting goods store. Before Christmas, I helped a woman pick out a bunch of scuba equipment for her daughter. She told me she was surprising her daughter with this big trip for the two of them, and we bonded over the trip. Then, 2 weeks later, she came back in tears to return all of it. Her daughter was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Next story. Well, it wasn't so much because of her return/exchange, but rather that the rewards was under her ex-husband's new wife's name. And she immediately froze, teared up, and started to shake. I felt so bad asking if the name was hers. It hit her like a ton of bricks and you could just see it on her face. The years of pain caused by the guy she used to call her man, and what the other woman did to their marriage. Maybe I'm over-exaggerating. I really don't know the situation, but she was extremely shaken up by it, and I apologized profusely. I even teared up myself a bit as well because at the time my mom was going through a nasty divorce and had to live with me in my small one-bedroom apartment. Next story. I work in a farmer-oriented retail shop. It sells a little bit of everything and it's surprisingly cheap. Plus, it's closer than most stores for about 40% of the customer base. Had a kid come in all excited buying parts for his brand new car. I believe it was an older muscle car, Camaro, old Chevy, I think, and it needed a new battery. He also bought a new jack, creeper, and some lights to make sure he could work on it. Then the kid's dad came in about 4 hours later with him and returned it all. Explained the kid had rolled the car and completely totaled it. I don't think he was older than 17, and he was just staring lifelessly at the counter as his dad did all of the talking. I felt horrible for him. Next story. I worked at a high-end clothing store. A woman came in with one of the more expensive white gowns. We normally don't take refunds or returns due to strict policy, but if there is a situation, a reason always has to be noted for head office. Turns out this gown was her wedding dress for after the reception, and she was returning it as her husband had suddenly passed away in a car accident. The wedding was planned less than a week from that day. She broke down uncontrollably as her mother tried to console her. I finished the return with her instead, and my heart still goes out to that poor woman. Well, everyone, I don't think it was a surprise that this became a very depressing and sad video, and yes, I did cry a little bit 1 or 2 times during the middle there, but as always, I try to send people away in a good mood at the end of these videos, especially during the sadder, heavy-hitting videos like this one. So, just regular sappy advice, be thankful for who you have in your life, and tell people you love them, and drink water, and just, appreciate life, because a lot of these people, I'm sure, did not expect any of these things, provided a lot of them were baby-related, but still, you never know when you might not see somebody again. So just be thankful for what you have. Do it for me. It would make me happy. But anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. I love your face. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and have a good one. Bye-bye!